Housing has always been a subject of utopian plans and ideals. People dream of living in a beautiful house, and communities and governments also dream of providing such beautiful houses to them. Based on the British history, we can see three broad phases of housing dreams. There was the model housing in the 19th century. Housing schemes of good quality was the dream in a time when most of the people, mainly in urban areas, lived in shabby, overcrowded structures in slums. It was a time of industrial paternalism, meaning thereby that the good industrialists will provide model housing to the workers. The good landlord will provide housing to the peasant. And the example we have seen in last module was the town of Saltire. However, most of the industrialists didn't provide housing to the workers. And if they provide the housing, it was not of good quality. So this idea or dream of model housing died in the late 19th or early 20th century. Then from 1920s to 1960s, we have the dream of housing, low-cost housing provided by the government. So housing was a tool of social engineering where beautiful cities, garden cities, and ideal communities were developed. And people of different classes and different races lived together amicably. So the idea was that most of the housing, at least for the poor or lower middle class, will come from the local councils. And of course, during this time, and especially after World War II, thousands of houses were built by the local councils. However, this dream also collapsed as it became more and more difficult for the government to finance low-cost housing or to provide rent-controlled housing to all the poor people or all the people who don't have housing. After 1970s, things changed again, and Margaret Thatcher took over in 1979, and she came up with this concept that every British person, man and woman, wants to own a house. They don't want to rent a house. They want to own a house, and government, rather than renting them houses, would make it easier for them to own their houses. So the socialist dream of the 1970s collapsed or failed, and we have this new dream of every British person owning his or her own home. And this policy continued at least for the next 30 years. And we see that the owner-occupied housing, which was around 30% of the households in 1950, increased by the 1990 to more than 70%. While the local authority houses or the council houses, which was around less than 20% in the 1950, increased to around 30% by the mid-70s, but then because of the sale of these houses to the people, it decreased to around again 20% by 1990. And while the private rented houses, which was more than 50%, decreased to less than 10%. So this is how things changed again. But by the 2010, it was recognized again that this private ownership dream is not providing efficient or effective or good quality housing to everybody, to every British person. So the government acknowledged that they have to make more houses available one way or the other. There were more than 8 million people in England who were living in unaffordable and insecure houses. The government delivered from 2010 to 2018 around 430,000 houses, but they were not enough. There was again a demand for social housing, which meant lower rents and more security provided by the government. Thank you.